Good morning. This is ASMM Digital Small Business Connections. I'm Ann Brennan. I'm the owner of ASMM Digital Marketing. We're a marketing firm for small businesses out of Maryland, but we work with people all over the country, not out of the country yet. So far, all of our clients are within the United States. We are here as the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. I always want to give you something you can walk away with and put to work in either your business or your life. Sometimes they're life lessons, sometimes they're business lessons. But to me, I need things to be actionable. It's actually, you guys have heard me say, listen to the Michael Hyatt podcast. I love the one with him and his daughter, Megan Hyatt Miller. I love it because every time I walk away with something I can put to work in my business. I usually finish it and call Anastasia right away and say, hey, Anastasia, you got to listen to this episode. It's so good. And that's what I want. That's what I hope, that you'll leave these episodes and call whoever works for you and ask them to listen because it's something that is important to you. So I want to remind you to subscribe. It's important to subscribe because we are a small business and we are running this basically out of the love of other businesses. That's what we're doing. We're not making any money off of it. It's not monetized at all. Hopefully, so YouTube will get monetized eventually. But we need you to subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube. Even if you're not over there watching it there, go over and subscribe there. But if you are, that's wonderful. And subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. And if you want to go one step further, you can leave us a review. Those go a long way towards getting us noticed out in the real world. So please do that. I want to remind you, if you are listening to this on YouTube today, you can leave a message and we can see that. That'll pop up on my screen. And if you have a question, we can put that up and ask Dick this question in person because you've got experts on the show who have the answers. So why not ask them? Today we've got Dick Rabil. Dick and I are in the same BNI group. I think he's the fourth person I've had from our BNI group, but I really love what he does with websites. And so I'm excited about having him on today to talk about websites and how to make them work for your business. Hi, Dick. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. And it's great to see you, Ann.
Yeah, nice to see you. I was just on your website and I've met your wife. And it didn't occur to me that you started that business together.
Well, we did. And she joined me in the business. Of course, I've got a long history of creative background in graphic design and in some in marketing and branding and all those kinds of things. But when we got focused on the website part is really when she joined the business, and she added so much to it. And she did a lot of the legwork in terms of getting us going and also helping focusing us with the marketing aspects of the business as well.
It's nice to have that. I mean, my husband is wonderful. He supports me in everything that I do, but he doesn't know what we do every day. So he'll give me suggestions, and I'm like, well, we've been doing that for a month, so that's not helping me right now. But that's because he's not involved in what we do.
And
So
I'll just say this, a lot of times people have asked us about how does it work, a husband and wife team working together? Can you really do that? And we answer it this way. Well, because we do such different things, it works for us
right.
because her brain is on the administrative side. She's focused on certain things. She's very good at what she does in that area. And then I do very different things in the creative area. And then it's great when we need to give each other feedback because we aren't overlapping and we aren't stepping on each other's toes. So we really do coordinate things very well in that respect.
That's great. Actually, it's funny because I was on a Clubhouse call this morning, and
Mhm.
we were talking about the one thing, and this is a book. It's actually right here. Let me grab it. The one thing book. There you go. And we were talking about sometimes the one thing is the one person. And in this case, it was Walt Disney and his brother Roy. And the same thing. He said Walt was the creative end of that. And Roy was the one who was on the administrative end of it. And they supported each other so well through it. I think Roy did a better job supporting Walt than Walt did supporting him because Walt would go to him and say, I need $3 million for this movie back in 1940. And Roy would go, okay, let me go figure out how I'm going to get $3 million.
Exactly right. And of course, Roy was behind the scenes making it all happen. Well, Walt is
Absolutely.
out front and everybody gets to see the results of Walt's work, but they don't see that without Roy, who is the backbone of the business, it wouldn't have happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to talk about custom websites, and you and I work together with a lot of clients on this. But let's talk about why it's important because you can go, I just had somebody say to me this morning, but I can build it on Wix. Why
Yes,
does it matter to have a custom website? And at what point do you need that?
right. And that's really critical because today so many things have become commoditized. So what do we mean by that? Well, it means that you can get something done easily, you can get it done cheaply, you can get it done fast, but it also puts you in a situation from a marketing standpoint of being lumped together with everyone else. I like to say that one size does not fit all. And the concept behind Wix or Squarespace or some of these other places is that one size does fit all. And there's a place for that. And I can't knock that because they've been successful with their models and they provided a good service. But at some point, your uniqueness has to stand out about who you are. You've got to be able to stand out of a crowd. And if you're a law firm, you're in a very crowded space. If you're a dentist, you're in a crowded space. And if you're in a roofer or a plumber or an electrician, you're still in a
Yes.
crowded space. And
Yeah.
so, how do you separate yourself from all of those other experts that are out there? How do you look different? And it comes down to being able to tell your story and what makes you unique with your personality, addressing the pain points that you address. And so I think, one of the examples recently was I was working with another person on a home maintenance package website, and they provided home maintenance packages that you pay for on a monthly basis. And the
Right.
website was nice, but it really wasn't focusing in on the actual people that it served. And so they would have one generic photograph and a little bit of something about a home, but you really couldn't tell what was going on in the website.
Right.
And so what we were able to do is we went in and we said, "Hey, we want to draw out a personality over here. This type of person who lives in a townhome, doesn't live in a single family house, and they still need services. And then we have a person in a small house and they need services. And then you have someone, of course, in a big house and they need services. And then age has a factor to play. So
Right.
all of these different types of personas that the people are trying to reach, it's often difficult if you're just putting up one generic website. How are you communicating your services to those people? And how are you separating yourself out from others? So,
Absolutely. And this is something that people don't think about because actually, quite honestly, people forget that they are, I should say, that they're talking to somebody else, right? That they're not just talking for themselves. And they understand their business, but people will create it themselves and then they put it out there and somebody coming to the website goes, what do they do exactly?
and
You
that's
know?
very shocking to the customer when they put up
Yeah.
their website and they said they've explained everything, and the person who looks at it says, "I don't know what you do," and they
Right.
don't understand why that happens. So, and I think that's a very, very genuine problem that keeps getting run into. And something that you have to think about when you put up a website is how long is this website really up there for? And is anybody going to come to this website and understand and how to reach out to me? So there's
Right.
a lot of layers that go on in building a website.
Right.
And
Well, and that's a good point. A lot of times people put it up there and then nothing turns me off as much as being on a website and not being able to figure out how to contact you.
exactly,
It
exactly.
drives me nuts because a lot of times that's why I'm going. I just want to call you. I want to answer. So that's a good point. All right, let's talk about customer pain points because you hear this, what are the pain points? And we ask our clients this all the time. But what do we mean when we say that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I actually have a graphic in front of me that I received as a result of an email from the Sandler Sales Institute. And Sandler does a really nice job of talking about sales and helping you think through things. But they put together this graphic because I always found it a bit of a mystery. What are the pain points? And what they did was they actually qualified the pain points into first and second, third and fourth level pain points. So the first two pain point levels that you read are kind of intellectual pain points. It's like there's a technical problem, or you have, it's a second level problem of something you got to deal with your family or your business. And those are intellectual, but they don't really get to the heart of what you're trying to solve. So then you have these third and fourth level pain points, and those are emotional. And when you get to emotional pain points, that's when people start to buy. You don't buy a car based on this gets the best gas mileage.
Right.
It's a little bit there, but really you buy that car because it looks cool, it fits your personality, it's the style, it's got red, it's got black, it's got gray, it's got all those things.
It's convertible and adorable.
Yeah.
My
Yes.
car is convertible and adorable.
Right.
So.
I mean, if we just bought a functional car, every car would, look like a Volkswagen Beetle from the 1960s.
There you go.
It would. So you have these other pain points where you're now emotionally involved and emotionally invested in
Right.
in something, and that's what you're looking for, and that's where you want to be able to capture on the website those people who have those pain points. I mean, if you're going to the dentist and you've got a pain in your tooth, you expect them to know what they're doing, but
Right.
you really want to answer the question: will I feel great when I come out?
Right. Right.
And that's one of the things that I think that dentists talk about: the smile. They talk about all these other things, but do you really feel good when you leave?
Right.
And so that's what we try to grasp, and that's what we try to zero in on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's it. You've got to think about what is it exactly that you're solving, because, think about our social media. Yes, I do social media and I post for you every day, and that's great. But what am I really doing? Yes, I'm bringing in business, and that's great as well. But there's also this nagging thing in the back of people's minds that they know they should be doing social media. They just don't have the time. So we give them back that time. We're doing it for them. We're taking away the worry, right? We're giving them something more than just getting them new business. We're giving them less worry, more time, and more business. That's a big deal for them.
And those are all emotional points
Yes.
that you're conveying, even though you're talking about time, which can seem to be outside of the emotional spectrum. It actually is so part of everything we do, because you and I talk about how busy we are. We talk about what's going on. We talk about, oh my gosh, I forgot to do that. All those things are important, and they're all affected by time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My first hire was really about time. The first time I hired somebody, I hired them because I could see the dishwasher over to my right, and it was leaking, and I didn't have the time to fix it, but I knew it was going to ruin my hardwood floor if it kept leaking like that. It's a major pain point. It really was.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it, but it was a major pain point. And when I hired her, I got so much more than I thought I was going to get, but I got lucky there. So
That's right.
All right.
So, go ahead.
So we've got the pain points, and then there's the problem that we actually solve for people. So what is that? And how is it different than the pain points?
Well, and that's also something that goes along with the pain points, but we also have to have, when we're building that website, we have to say, yes, people have problems. I mean, if you're a divorce lawyer, obviously you are solving people's problems, and they're coming to you because they've got a problem, first of all, and
Right.
they need a solution to that problem, and they want to know, well, are you not only going to be able to solve the problem for me, but can I relate to you? Can I trust you? And so those are kinds of things that you really get into. And the other, another one is, let's say you have three children, and one of them is really, really having a difficult time behavior-wise.
Okay.
And so let's say you're looking for a behavior therapist, but if you go to the website and they start talking about all these therapies, you're like, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know if they can really help my child because I've got a problem.
Right.
And so when we talk about what problem are you solving, are you really putting that out there for people to clearly understand, I can relate to you? That's what we're really saying. I have a
Right.
story. I can relate to you. I understand you and I'm listening to you. And so when we can combine that visually and we can combine it verbally, then people will say, oh, I believe you can help me because
Right.
I believe you can solve my problem because you understand, first of all, that there is a problem. You aren't
Right.
just spouting off a whole bunch of intellectual statements to me, objective statements. There's something here that you really have thought about and you really have made a connection with me on. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard. Websites can only go so far.
Right.
The more we can try and tap into that and draw it out, the easier it is for the viewer to connect with you. So
Right.
that
Well,
user experience comes into it.
I think sometimes we have a product and it's a great product, but we don't it solves our need. Maybe that's why we created it. It solves our need. But instead of realizing that there are other personas out there, there are other people who this is going to, we just focus on our needs. So this a great example actually was my problem when I first started my blog years ago. Anne's running commentary. Anne's running commentary. I was a 42-year-old mom. I was running and biking and doing all of these things, and it was so I'm like, who am I aiming this for? Other 42-year-old moms who are running and biking and swimming and all of these things. And that's how I wrote. As a mom, I would say, as a mom, and almost every blog post would say, as a mom. And finally, I noticed men leaving comments saying, well, as a dad, I also have that issue. And then I started looking at my statistics. I started looking at what's happening on my website, my analytics. And I realized that 52% of my readers were men. And almost all of my readers were under 40. So it was interesting. It wasn't who I thought I was talking to.
Yeah, and that leads us to some really interesting things here because we start to measure things and we say, well, how am I communicating and who am I communicating to? And we suddenly look and we say, gosh, I didn't know that 52% of my readers were men. Why is that? And suddenly you're having to answer that question. And what is it they're identifying with? And what are you doing that you're identifying with their needs? And
Right.
so now, instead of just continuing on as you were, you're now suddenly expressing yourself in a larger stage and a bigger platform. And that's
Right.
pretty exciting.
So actually, as I'm thinking about this, is when people build a website, and I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna, just lead you right into it. They build it and then they leave it there, right? And that's what you're supposed to do:
Exactly.
build it and then you leave it there. But that's not really true.
No, it's not. No, because of what you just said. It was because you stopped and you analyzed what was going on and you discovered that, oh, there's something else here I hadn't realized. And suddenly there's a 36-year-old guy who wants to know how to take care of his family just as much as the 42-year-old mom does. And you never dreamed that could be possible. So now analytics becomes a key part of your website. Search engine optimization is where we're going with that. And that's where, sometimes I've been on LinkedIn, people will ask for an estimate to do a website and they'll say, I want this, I want this, I want this. And please add on SEO. As if SEO is just a button that you push. And it's really not, because we talk about the words in our marketing phrases, the jargon that we've had, search engine optimization, but we have no idea what it really means.
Right.
We have no idea what it really does. And when you open up that hood and you look underneath and you see all these little gears going around, you would be shocked. You would be shocked to see all the stuff that has to go into making a good search engine optimization of your website.
Right.
Because it's not only, you're answering a lot of questions about who you are, where you want to live, who's going to press the button and what audience you're trying to reach, what town they're in, what geographic location they're in, and what are the words that you're using. All those words that you used for your running blog was triggering somebody somewhere, because
Right.
it was coming up somewhere, and they're going, wow, I want to read this lady. I want to find out what she knows.
Right.
And those words were jumping out. Well, we think those words get out there magically. And in some respects, technology is magical from that standpoint. But actually, you code the words in there. You
Right.
say, we actually sit down and we look at the words, we look at the phrases, and we look at how many are being used, and Google has those algorithms going that are moving around and saying, we're going to grab this and we're going to grab that. So there's this whole state of things that have to take place and put together. It's like cooking dinner.
Right.
You have a meal, you got all these ingredients. Yeah, you could get one out of the box, but it's not going to really taste very good.
Right.
Throw it together, and after a day or so, you don't want it again. But if you make it yourself, and you've got what those ingredients are, and you've put in the cumin, and you've put in this other ingredient, you put in this, and it's going to taste way different, and it's
Right.
going to last a lot longer, and it's going to have much more benefit to you.
Absolutely. So there's two things you mentioned there. You said the
Yeah.
algorithms, which I want to definitely talk
Mhm.
about, and then you talked about we talked about the analytics. And I want to go back. Let's start with the algorithms, which is something that's really important to us in social media, but it's true on websites as well. There are algorithms that is using to decide how you're going to rank. And part of that on social media and on your website is consistency and actually being active, right? So it's why we will encourage people to add a blog to their website, or to go in and pay attention and maybe change words and do some things to update their website on a regular basis so it doesn't sit there. We just redid somebody's website that was 11 years old, and they have not touched it in 11 years. It was awesome. It was like something out of a museum. So, but I mean, they literally have not touched it in that long and wondered why they weren't ranking. And that's why it's because you're not touching it. So that consistency of being on is so important. It's so important to not just build a website and leave it there and let it sit.
Yes, and that's absolutely right. And content is still so valuable, and um, and I think it's a challenge, but that's why people come to you, Ann, because they want to know, well, how do I get this content from here to there in
Right.
order to impact those algorithms? Because that's what you're really doing. You're
Right.
impacting the algorithms, and then people out there are searching, and it's funny how we search, because the other day I got into a topic I was interested in. I was searching things on it, and all of a sudden the next day this video pops up, and it's related to the topic that I was on, but I never would have known that video was there.
Right.
And I had no idea it was there. But because I had gone through this whole stream of searching for something specific, and because those algorithms were picking that up and picking that up, and then they were saying, well, maybe he needs to look at this, and maybe he needs to, and did you know there's this? And
Right.
so it leads you down a path, and and suddenly you get to some very valuable information you had no idea was there. So there's a
Absolutely.
power out there. In some ways, it can be a little intimidating, but once we get used to it and once we're familiar with it, it can start to serve us instead of us serving it.
Yes.
So it can
Absolutely.
circle back to us. It circles back to our content, circles back to our website, and circles back to us as experts.
Absolutely. And that's actually the second point of this was the analytics, right? We can use the analytics for so many things, but one of the things for me, and I'm going to just share a story that happened to us. I got so tired. We own a digital marketing agency, so I have to tell you, my Google account is up to date. I promise. It's got all my information on
Google,
it.
Google My Business.
But yeah, my Google My Business, but I get so many phone calls saying, "Oh, hey, it's Google," and your account is not up to date.
Right.
And but everybody does. We're all getting those. And so I decided to write an article for my website about this. Is it a scam? What is it? What's going on? Why do they call me? And I wrote this article. We put it up there. It is still by far, it's been up there about 6 months now. It is by far the most popular content we have on our website. And I could look at it and say, oh, well, that's cool that's I've got a popular blog up there that's doing really well and it's getting a lot of traffic, and just leave it at that. But instead, we were able to go, wait a second, hold on, we don't do Google Ads. Oh, we should probably do Google Ads. And so we brought somebody on who does Google Ads, because we're like, clearly people are looking for this, and let's put it out there. And so now this is something we do. But if you're not paying attention to your analytics, you wouldn't. And if I had been selling things on my blog, right, and I was only selling to women, then I'm missing 52% of the people. I could have been selling to men as well.
Correct. And it's challenging. You know, we talked earlier about dentists and doctors and lawyers are in a very competitive space. And so if you're a family law person, you know it's extremely competitive. And so just to have search engine optimization is not going to be enough for you. And you're going to need something like Google AdWords to help propel you to the top of those pages in the search rankings, in addition to other networking things that you have to be doing. So all of this is, all of this comes back to the very thing that you do so great, and that's strategy. You know, you sit down with your clients and you say, you know, we have to form a strategy. We have to get a roadmap. We got to get a plan. And we got to tweak that plan every few months to see how we're doing. Because if you hadn't stopped and looked at your blog and said, oh, 52% are men, where would you be now? You'd still be just talking about everything you talked about.
Absolutely.
You would have been back there instead of where you are now.
Right. So, well, I thought that the people who would read it were women. And so I was putting my stuff out to women's magazines. And then I realized, no, I could put it out to Runner's World. I could put it out to bigger magazines that covered, a larger area. I could get on podcasts that were different, that were men and women. I could do all of that. So I want to talk about something, and we didn't talk about this exactly, but some people think of their website as almost like a vanity plate. You know, this is what I do. Here it is. Let me tell you everything about what I do. And that's not really what we should do with our websites. And it's great to tell them this is what we do. You want that to be out there, but it's more than that.
Right. And it's a lot more than that. And it comes down to the natural tendency is to talk about us. But really, people want to know that, you know, there's some interesting user experience studies out there right now when people go to the website. And they say, you want to go and order a hamburger. Well, those websites that you can get a hamburger ordered really quickly and delivered to your house really quickly have great user experience ratings.
Right.
But it doesn't say that the food is great. It doesn't say that the delivery time was great. It just says that it was responsive. So on the one level, the experience can be great and you seem like you're really meeting the customer's needs. But then there's another level that I think it goes back to those emotional pain points that says, hey, perhaps you need a drink with that hamburger. You know, perhaps did you think about the fact that, you know, the next time you order, we're going to give you $2 off, you know, and they start to look at the customer beyond just the product or the service. They're looking now at the customer as a relationship. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that customer needs equal relationship. And one of the things I think we lose sight in, and I know it's hard to keep this in mind, is that we're building relationships. It's like old-timey sales stuff. You know, it's not like those paradigms have just, you'd think we've kind of thrown them in the trash. But really, we're trying to build relationships because it's so hard to keep relationships. And it's so hard to find the right relationships. So once we find one, we want to make it, and we want to keep it, and we want to build on it.
Absolutely. And that is something that's so important. I just got an email this morning from somebody who said, I had sent an email out to all of my clients and some people who had been on my podcast about business to business marketing. And he's like, and he says, I never thought that businesses should use social media because, we're not trying to reach the person who's on Facebook. We're trying to reach businesses. And I had to stop and ask him, who do you think's on the other end when you call? Are you calling the business or are you calling a person? And once we started talking it through, realized that, oh, yeah. And this is something we say all the time. You've got to think about it as a person to person. No matter whether you're a business to customer or a business to business, you are a person to person company. And that holds true on your website. It holds true in your social media. It holds true in everything you do. So it's so important that you keep that customer in mind.
Yeah, and just, it's kind of like the golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
You really want to be able to put that out there. That person out there is you. And if you're treating yourself the way you should be, you're going to treat them correctly as well.
Absolutely.
So that's a great
Absolutely.
point. Yeah.
Well, I love, you and I were just working on a website last week, and we were working together with a customer, and you asked about the person on the other end, and you're like, who is it? Who is this product aimed at? Who's going to be using it? And you really do dig deep into that, and I think it's so important. I'm reading. I've got 4 books going right now. It's kind of ridiculous. I actually get a little lost in what I'm reading sometimes. But I'm reading Everybody Writes by Anne Hanley. And she talks about the fact that people will write things without thinking about the customer on the other end or the reader on the other end. And it's so important to do that. And not just one. Yes, you want to aim definitely at one, but think about all of the people that you're going to have to reach with that website. Like what you said, you're going to a homeowner who has a condo, a homeowner who has a townhome, and a homeowner who owns a single family home. They all need this service. So how are you going to reach all of them?
Exactly. And are you going to be able to say to them, here's the benefits. Here's the benefits.
Right.
Not that I'm going to get these benefits, but these are the benefits that you're going to get
Right.
when you work with us.
Exactly.
You're going to get the customer service you deserve. Oftentimes there's one platform there where homeowners go on and they say, do you know an electrician? Do you know this? Do you know somebody? They'll ask their neighbor, who is it that they could recommend? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say something they're going to recommend somebody who made them feel good.
Right.
And there was one company that I recommended, and then 3 or 4 other people recommended, and I was kind of impressed that they all recommended this company, not just because it was the one that I used, but it confirmed the fact that they were very consistent in that how they were treating their customers. They were treating them as people. They were being consistent and showing up on time, delivering on time, doing what they said, giving them a fair price. All those things, all those benefits were woven into the fabric of who they were as a company. And that becomes part of their culture. And that culture is something that in our frenzied techno world, we tend to lose a whole sight of. We don't always have that. I grew up in a small city. You grew up in a small city. And so we know that neighbors and friends and family were always important to help us do things. And now that we have we've been more insulated lately, we still want that. It's still part of who we are, and it's still part of the fabric of how we've been designed.
Absolutely.
And I don't think we lose that. So the more we can put those things out there and present those things, the more people will be attracted to it.
It's funny because this person was not a client, but I had a humongous tree that had to be taken down in my old house. And I mean, it was so huge that 4 of us couldn't put our arms around it, It was a very big tree, and it was right on the line between my house and my neighbor's house. And they had to remove the fence. I mean, they had to pull, there were so many layers to getting this tree down. And they had to take down 9 other trees around it because this tree, they couldn't take it down. They couldn't get the machinery in there without. But that tree had to come down because it was big and it was dead and it was a problem. And when he finished, he was like, so how did it go? Because he wasn't there. It was it was his whole crew. And he came by and he says, how did it go? And I said, oh my God. I said, it was so great. Not only did they take the tree down, but they picked up all of the debris. They raked my yard so that where there had been holes where parts had fallen, I didn't have those holes. They swept off my deck because some of the stuff flew onto the deck. All of these things. And I was like, but it was so clean afterwards. It was so clean afterwards. And he goes, taking that tree down was one of the most technical jobs we have ever had. And he says, it doesn't matter. That happens a lot where we will have a job that is extremely dangerous, extremely technical. And every time the homeowner says, what really mattered is that you cleaned up after yourself. And it's true. So you have to think about, he knew that. He was very aware of that. So on his website, it says, and we clean up after ourselves. We make a point of cleaning up after ourselves because he knew that matters to people.
It's how you make them feel.
Exactly.
He made you feel terrific. In fact,
right.
I designed a home cleaning services website, and I looked at all the competition for home cleaning services,
mm-hmm.
and they wanted to talk about how fast they were, how expensive they were, how this, how that. But what we focused on was how the person felt after they came into the house and it was clean.
Yes,
and how
absolutely.
you felt was what was so important.
Absolutely. What is that? Oh my gosh, Dick, I'm going to forget the name of it. What's that spray you spray? It's not Lysol. It's the Febreze.
Oh, Febreze, yeah.
And there's a story about that when they were they were doing all this advertising for it, and then so they had families. They tested it with families. They're like, can we just video you cleaning the house and see what happens, and use this Febreze. And every time the person who's cleaning would spray whatever they're spraying, spray the air, spray the dog bed, spray the couch, whatever it was, and every time they would stop and they'd go and every time they'd do that little sigh, and they're like, oh, it's that feeling of, oh, that's the final touch, that's the final thing they need. So it is so important that we give them that.
And that brings us full circle here about why a custom website.
Right.
When you go to a out-of-the-box website, you can't get that moment of enlightenment, that aha moment. It's hard to capture that. And when you're doing a custom website, if we're asking the correct questions, because I like to ask my clients a lot of questions about why they're doing something, what they're doing, when did they do it, the very things that we talked about last week with the customer. We want to get to that aha moment.
Right.
Right. Because that can be the key point in making a turn on them, for them, in terms of what makes them unique. So.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We're going to really switch off now and go to my favorite subject, which is books. I told you I have 4 books going right now. It's kind of ridiculous. I just finished Andre Agassi's Open, which I'm not the hugest tennis fan, but it was really, really good. It's really good.
I'll tell you a funny story real quick. Years ago, I did an equestrian magazine. Back when magazines were real big, I did a lot of magazine work. And I did this equestrian magazine, but the owner of the equestrian magazine was a good tennis player. And so his favorite player was Andre Agassi. And so sometimes he would call my office and he'd leave a message and say, tell him Andre Agassi called. And my staff would go, I don't know who this guy is. He's talking. He said he was Andre Agassi. And I go, I know who
that is. Yeah, it was a good book, but let's talk about, what are your favorite books? Well, we're going to talk about 2. We're going to talk about what you've just read and what you've got on your bookshelf.
Right. So the most recent book that I just read was by Dr. Caroline Leaf. It's called The Switch on Your Brain. And she is a neuroscientist, and she's now been doing neuroscience for over 35 years. And she's an amazing woman, has an amazing podcast. And and part of her thing is there's a lot of elements to the book. It's not one of those books that you read from front to back. I actually read the book as a result of having done a 21-day Switch on Your Brain therapy. She has an app, and you go each day, and let's say you're struggling with something in your life. And I had a particular issue that I was struggling with, and so I decided to do the 21-day therapy. And so every day you do a little tiny meditation, and then you write down some stuff, and she walks you through, and she has this process. So I did the 21-day, and it was really quite fantastic, and it really set me in motion and changing some things. And then I started going back and reading her book. And the book has so many different pieces. It's got a lot of different aspects to it. One of the core aspects is about mindsets, how we can change our minds, how our brains are plastic. They're like plastic, and they can change. And every day we wake up with new cells. We impact the immunity in our lives by our thoughts. Our thoughts are what really determine who we are, how we live, and how we can live.
Right.
And so I'm capsulizing this for your audience right now. But if you want to really expand your ability to do something, pick up this book and try some of the things, read some of the things.
That's great. Yeah,
another area, I'll just tell you one other area that's a little more challenging is she goes into quantum physics, and she gives one of the best explanations of quantum physics. Quantum physics can be, way up here.
Yeah, exactly.
And she summarizes it in very nice little segments. But if you've ever wondered, gee, I was on this plane and I met this person and blah, 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 and I never saw him again. She explains, quantum physics explains that phenomena of meeting somebody you never thought you would meet, and yet they did something at a certain moment in a certain time. And it's called quantum entanglement. And it's a very real physics thing that's not explained in Newtonian physics. It's explained in a what they call subatomic level physics.
Okay.
So it's a neuroscience level of physics that will blow your mind when you really start to understand it.
Right.
But it's really hard to describe it too, because it's experiential. Whereas gravity is up and down, you see it, you know it. Quantum physics explains what's unexplainable.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, and there are so many of those things that I'll tell my husband that I'll be reading one book that's completely not related to another book, and then suddenly that same theory shows up in a book, about tennis, and I'm like, why are these things happening? Why is my life giving me all these things at one time? This must be something I'm supposed to know.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a real cause and effect, and we don't know that it's there, but we can actually. She proves in her book that you can actually change your DNA. And the epigenetic level of DNA can be changed simply because of how you're thinking about moving from a negative position of thinking about it to a positive position of thinking about it. You can change what's going on in your bodies on the cellular level. So that's very technical kinds of terms, and I couldn't even begin to tell you what it really, really means, but it sure does make you feel great when you understand it.
That's great. That's awesome. And then you have another book on your list for next.
Right, which is called The Emotion Code. And it's sitting there, and once I get finished going back through Switch on Your Brain, I'm going to go to the Emotion Code book, which again, it's interesting that today we talked a lot about emotional pain points and what it is that makes us up as human beings, and how, we talk about I felt something was right in my gut.
Right.
Well, our gut is actually a third brain that we have. We have this part of our brain, we have our heart brain, we have our gut brain. We have these three levels of thinking. And so and I'm looking forward to reading that book to really delve into more of that aspect of how we think and operate and make decisions.
It's interesting you brought this up because, as a runner, and now I'm not running as much, I walk, um, but I'm always doing things. I'm always out there. I'm walking somewhere. And, whether it's through the woods or down the street or in a different neighborhood, I'm always walking somewhere. Which means that my safety is always a concern, right? I'm a woman walking through wherever I am, and my safety is a concern. And so I had the opportunity to talk with a police officer who was on the SVU, Sexual Violence Unit, I guess. And he said to me that without exception, he says, without exception, when somebody was attacked by a stranger, the woman afterwards looked back and said, I knew that was a street I shouldn't have gone down. That I felt like that was a van that looked suspicious. And each time they didn't trust their guts. And he said, so trust your gut. If you're running, you're out in the woods and suddenly something doesn't feel right, turn around, go the other way. He says, even if it makes no sense, just go the other way. And it was a really good thing for me. It was very, very good for me that I was able to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do that. Even if it makes that other person uncomfortable, I'm going to do that. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So,
so our emotions and our intuition are far more powerful than we give them credit for, particularly as a man speaking. I think women are much more in touch with this, because they've been taught that and they've been open to that. But for men to be operating in this kind of space as well is extremely important. And we do have a sense. All of us have a sense, and and the more we can focus in on it and bring it to life, the healthier we're going to be, the stronger we're going to be, and the wiser we're going to be. And eventually, and I think the more loving we'll be.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about how people find you.
All right, and right now the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com/Dick Rabil. And I put that in the little chat.
I tried to come over there. I'm going to put that in the show notes.
Okay. I haven't spent I like being on Facebook mainly to wish everybody happy birthday. I'm pretty good at happy birthday to everybody on Facebook. And
exactly.
But I don't spend as much time on there, because of other things. But I love saying happy birthday. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they can get you at slice-works.com.
That's correct. That's my website.
Or they can always visit our chapter of our BNI chapter.
Our BNI chapter, the Capital Business Alliance chapter. Please come out and visit us. We'd love to see your face. We like visitors, and we don't care what you do. Well, sometimes we care what you do, but but for the most part, we're just glad to have you there and join us and meet the people that are there for the day.
Absolutely. And yeah, we could have done a whole thing on networking because it is so powerful. It is something that we both use to build our businesses and continue to use. So it's something that I've talked about a lot on this show in particular. All right, everybody else, I'm going to see you next week. Dick, stick around just 1 second and I'll see you soon.